Hey everyone, we are going to look at order of operations and evaluating today. So this is our fourth day of notes for this class. Yesterday was the third day. Yesterday we looked at fractions and exponents. So hopefully you've watched that video, you've completed that assignment, you've submitted it to me, and now we can move on to our next topic. So next we're going to look at order of operations. I am 1000% sure that you have all heard of the order of operations before. So like a lot of the stuff we're doing in chapter 1A, this is actually before the algebra book even starts. I'm hoping that this is something you have seen before. So the first thing we're going to look at is just the basic order of operations. So this is probably something you've heard before. We usually say PEMDAS. Here is what every letter stands for. So P means parentheses, and I don't particularly like that we say P per parentheses. It should really be a G for grouping symbols, because this could include parentheses or brackets or braces. So the brackets are a little more like boxy and the braces are a little more squiggly. You'll see them all in our examples, so don't get too hung up on those. Next we're looking at exponents. So after you do all the parentheses, then we look at the exponents. We talked about exponents yesterday, so you guys should be good to go on that. After we do exponents, we do multiplication and division, but those happen at the same time from left to right. So again, these guys are the same time, and you just go down the problem in the way you would read it. So start at the left, go down to the right, simplifying all the multiplying and dividing at the same time, and then we go and we do all the addition and subtraction at the same time. So again, PEMDAS. And then here's just a little note about your work. I want to see only one step of the order of operations on each line. So if you're doing exponents and there's two different places that you have exponents, let's say for an example, you could do that all on one line. But I don't want you jumping around and doing too much work in your head, skipping steps. That's when we make mistakes. All right, so here's example 1. If you want to go ahead and pause the video and write this down, you can. But because of the magic of the internet, I am just going to get right to it. So we want to start with first parentheses, then exponents. I'll just write it over here. Parentheses, exponents, multiply and divide. Those go together from left to right. Add, subtract, go together from left to right. So anytime we have more than one grouping symbol, we start in the innermost grouping symbol. So I'm going to underline what I'm working on for each step. Everything else that I'm not working on, you just copy in the next line below. Okay, and I'm going to keep that in parentheses until I know if they matter or not. So 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. Now, really, those parentheses wouldn't matter if you wanted to drop them off 1 squared. It doesn't have a sign with it, so it doesn't really matter if you keep the parentheses or not. But again, I like to keep the parentheses until I know for sure that they're not important. Okay, so we still have a grouping symbol. So do you see how these guys are still there? So I'm going to be working in here, but we follow the order of operations within that grouping symbol as well. So that's why I did the parentheses inside the parentheses. Now I'm going to do the exponents inside the parentheses. So this guy stays the same, this guy stays the same. Still have that bracket. -8 stays -8 plus, and then 1 squared, that's just 1 times 1, which is 1. All right, I still have a grouping symbol, so I'm still working inside here. So 4 plus 6 hasn't changed at all. -8 plus 1. So the signs are different. I'm going to subtract the numbers, keep the sign of the larger number, so that's going to be -7. Okay. Now, there is still a grouping symbol. However, it's acting like a multiplication symbol in this step because there's a number right next to it. So there's really nothing else we can do inside of there. So we can keep going down the list. There's no other exponents. So now we're at the multiply and divide step. So we are going to look right here. I have a positive times a negative. So I know it's going to end up being a negative. I'll just keep these with it just to help me keep my sign straight right here. And 6 times 7 is 42, so -42. Now I'm adding opposites, so I'm going to subtract the numbers and keep the sign of the larger number. So 42 minus 4, well, that's 38 but since the larger number was negative, my answer is going to be negative, so negative 38. All right, if you missed any steps or need more time, just go ahead and pause the video or rewind the video or fast forward the video. Like I said, kind of the magic of the internet, you can take as much or as little time on these as you need, but please do not skip steps. I know last week I was saying like, well, you can take detailed notes, you could just kind of watch. Today is a day where you need to be taking detailed notes. You should have a quiet space that you're sitting. You should be writing this down line by line and working through these problems with me. All right, so let's go ahead and go to our next one. So again, we are just gonna go parentheses, exponents, multiply and divide from left to right, add, subtract from left to right. And hopefully by then we are good to go. So I have two sets of parentheses. So I'm actually gonna shorten this up and just kind of do them at the same time. They're on different ends of the problem. They're not gonna affect each other. So I'm just gonna keep everything else the same, but I'm gonna simplify both of those parentheses. So 6 minus 8, that's gonna be negative 2 squared, plus 7 minus 5 is positive 2, and squared. All right, so I still have parentheses, however, there's nothing I can do inside the parentheses, so I'm gonna move on to exponents. So I have a negative 2 squared and a positive 2 squared. Again, it's the same step of the order of operations and they're not gonna affect each other, so you can do them all at one time. So this is 4. Now, a negative 2 times a negative 2, since the negative is in parentheses, is going to be a positive 4. Okay, again, a negative times a negative is a positive. And then plus, and then back here, 2 squared, that's 2 times 2, so positive 4 again. Now, a number right next to parentheses, this stands for multiplication up here. Back here, it doesn't really mean anything. If you wanted to drop those parentheses back there, that would be completely fine. Let me just erase those, show you that that's fine too, okay? All right, so up front, we still have some multiplying. So that's going to be 16. And then I can go ahead and add these, and I get 20. All right, need more time? Pause, have questions? Send me a hangout. If not, we are good to go. All right, here is a tricky one. So we have parentheses with an exponent being multiplied by a pretty large number and then being subtracted. So let's just go step by step. Now, when you have a fraction like this, it's sort of like a grouping symbol at the top and one at the bottom as well. You have to simplify the top, then the bottom, then actually work through the fraction, okay? So we are gonna focus right now on that numerator. So 7 minus 5, that gives me 2. There's really nothing to do in that denominator, so I'm just gonna copy it down. Then it's squared, then I'm going to subtract. All right, now I have a fraction to an exponent. So I actually need to square the 2 and square the 5. And that would be my next step because there's nothing else to do inside these parentheses. This is as simplified as this fraction is gonna get. So when I square the 2, I get 4. When I square the 5, I get 25. Now I'm actually gonna write this guy out here as a fraction as well because I think I'm gonna be able to do some of that cross canceling we looked at last week. Or actually, no, that was just yesterday when you guys did the fractions. Sorry, I'm recording these like large chunks at a time. I'll record 3 or 4 days at once. So I recorded the fractions last week, but you guys just watched it yesterday. Okay, so now we have nothing else I can do inside these parentheses, right? That's as simplified as that's gonna get. So I would be on to my multiplying and dividing step. So here we are multiplying two fractions. So I am gonna actually simplify those. So 125 and 25. So 25 goes into 125 6 times, anytime I'm working with 25, I think of quarters. So 4 quarters would make $1, 100, and $1.50 would be 6 quarters. Okay. Sorry if I made that more complicated than it needed to be. Now I can multiply across the top. So 6 times 4, that gives me 24. Over 1, I'm not going to keep the over 1 part. And then minus 110. So I have a positive number minus an even larger number. So I know my answer is going to be in the negative. So you can subtract these numbers and we end up with negative 86 on this one. All right, and I had planned for a few more examples. I'm trying really hard to keep these lessons under 15 minutes though, so I am actually going to pause my recording and I'm gonna get to our evaluating stuff so we can look at that pretty quickly. If you need more examples on order of operations, you can send me an email or a Hangouts. I have a bunch of these videos that I've recorded over the years, so I can send you one of the longer ones that I made last year when we were in person and I was actually recording classes, or I can send you a link to a Khan Academy video that will help. So if 3 examples wasn't enough, I totally get you. I usually do way more than 3, but like I said, just to keep these videos at a little bit more of a manageable length for you guys, I'm going to jump ahead. All right, so here is the second half of our lesson for today. This is all about evaluating. So it says, in the following problems, you will be given an expression with variables and a numeric value for each variable. You don't need to write this slide down, just so you know. This is kind of just a preview for what we're doing. So the first thing you want to do is you want to substitute the number in for the variable. Then we follow the order of operations like we have been. So here's our first example. And again, we were on number 3, now we're on number 7. So if you want to just make that a 4 in your notes, that would be just fine. So we have 5 times x times y plus 6 times x. And then I'm given some information about what x and y are supposed to represent, okay? So this x and this x are both actually the value 2/5. And this y is actually -4. So when we rewrite this, we are going to take all the variables out and just put parentheses. And you know, in basketball or football or sports, anytime you have a substitute, one player has to leave the game before the next player can enter the game. That's the same thing here. I see a lot of students try to keep the x and keep the value that x is supposed to be. You got to drop the x, replace it with the new value. Okay, so for every x, I'm going to put 2/5. And for every y, I'm going to put a -4. And again, I keep them in parentheses until I see if it's going to affect my overall answer. Normally, when you have exponents and you have negatives, that's when the parentheses do matter. They will affect your overall answer. So just keep them until you know. All right, so now I am going to double check inside my parentheses. Is there anything I can do as far as order of operation? There is not. I don't have any exponents, so now I'm on the multiplying and dividing step. I have a lot of multiplying. I can already see that, so I'm just going to work from left to right. And I'm going to think of all of these as fractions just to kind of help me see if I can simplify anything. So over here I have a 5 in a numerator and then a 5 in the denominator, so I'm going to go ahead and cross those out. So that guy just becomes a 1. And then 2 times -4, that's -8. Plus, here I have a 5 and a 6, those don't simplify, and I have a 2 and a 1, those don't simplify. So I can just multiply across the top, I get 12, and across the bottom I get a 5. All right, so now I am adding 2 fractions, so let me go ahead and make that one a fraction again. So I'm going to need some like terms. This does not simplify, so that's not super helpful, but I can turn this guy into a fraction with a denominator of 5. So that's going to be my plan of attack here. I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by 5. So that gives me -40 over 5 plus 12 over 5. Now I can go ahead and add the numerators. So here the signs are different, so I'm going to subtract the numbers, keep the sign of the larger number. So that's actually negative 28 over 5. All right, if you need more time, pause it. I'm going to try to find us one with exponents that we can do really quickly, and then we will call it a day. All right, so here's the next one. I believe we're on example 5, so let's just number it 5. Again, I'm going to try to go kind of quick, but I did want to show you why the parentheses are sometimes important. So here we have an x and an x, and I'm going to replace both of them with a negative 4. And I'm going to keep it in parentheses, and here's really why that becomes important. First of all, the parentheses are a way that we write multiplication. If you just wrote a 4 and then a negative 4, it might look like 4 minus 4. So it helps us keep multiplying straight. It also helps us keep our sign straight, okay? So when I plug in the two negative 4s for my x's, then I just follow the order of operations. So parentheses. Well, there's nothing I can do to simplify either of those parentheses. So I'm going to go to exponents, okay? So right here I have negative 4 squared. So that's negative 4 times negative 4, which is a positive 16. And then everything else is just going to stay the same. All right, now I can do multiplication and division from left to right. It looks like I have two places where I see multiplication. So 4 times 16, well, that's 64. Now, there's a few different ways students like to write this. If you want to write minus and then do a positive 7 times a negative 4, you'd have minus and negative, which would become a plus. I'm just going to take care of it all in one step. So if I have a negative 8 times a negative 4, a negative times a negative becomes a positive. So I'm just going to write it as plus 28 plus 9. Now I'm down to just addition and subtraction. So I am going to work from left to right. And when I do 64 plus 28 plus 9, I get 101. All right, and just like I said earlier, if this is not enough examples for you, I totally get it. I'm already about 2.5 minutes over my goal of 15 minutes, so I'm going to call it a day for today. You do have a worksheet, though. If you're working through the worksheet and you're like, I just don't feel like I got enough practice on this, that's fine. Email me. I have so many videos on this. It could take up your whole day with videos on this. Or you could look it up on Khan Academy. Just Google evaluating expressions, or you could just do order of operations if that's what you're struggling with. But go ahead and find those resources, or contact me if you need some more resources on this. If not, we are done for the day as far as notes, so you can go ahead and go to the classwork tab and just work through your worksheet. And I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.